Okay. Hear that? Oh, it's strong. I use Smith & Cross, which is a Navy strength rum, so it's a little bit more potent. So welcome to the Halaba Fantasy Football League weekly recap. This is the final regular season game. Since I'm recording this early, I'm gonna have to divide this episode or just split it out, because I know everyone's interested on who's making the playoffs. But if you look at the orders right now, the standings, it has not updated the standings. That doesn't happen until, I don't know, like 10 o'clock at night. So, and in the interest of time, I'm going to just do the recap today, and then tomorrow we can have a follow-up episode on who made the playoffs and who didn't. We can kind of figure it out, and we'll kind of allude to it, but for the most part, we're just going to focus on the recaps of the games. Okay, so where do we start? Let's just start off with the ones that are not so consequential. Let's see. Prince Llama versus Brad. So if we're looking at this matchup, Bradley is out of the playoffs. We're giving credit for finishing this regular season out. Eric is kind of jockeying for top spots. By virtue of his tie, though, he's either going to leapfrog people or not. But in this case, because as far as tiebreakers go, there is really none because of the draw. But for them, on their matchup, Eric beats Brad 124.66 to 91.56. And if I'm looking at the scores here, Joe Burrow was kind of pedestrian. Devontae Smith is pretty decent, 14.9. Jalen Waddle only had 2 receptions for 31 yards. Miami kind of got shut down. Dalvin Cook also was held in check by Detroit. Jerry Jacobs had a solid game, 21.1. He has been kind of the RB1 for the second half, but I think he got hurt, so we'll see what happens going forward. His big scorer is Evan Ingram, 33.7, who just went off and nuts. So, good pickup for the playoffs to have a tight end who's strong like that. Nick Chubb only had 8.3, Suck Up only 1, and the San Francisco D had 11. As far as off the bench, Deontay Johnson had 11.2, which is okay. The big one is Miles Sanders. So Eric keeps benching Miles Sanders, and Miles Sanders keeps going off. So we'll see. You watch what happens in the playoff. He's gonna finally start him, and then Miles Sanders is gonna give him a dud. That's kind of like, I don't know what happens. Watson had 20.54, so he has a slow trending trajectory up, and Hillard only had 1.08. He had Hill and Lazard on bye week this way. It was a heavy bye week this week. For Brad, Tannehill had 22.46. Gallup only had 5. Wilson had an okay 10.8. Najee Harris had an okay 13.2. Low scores by Wilson and Dulcich, only 5.7, which is, to be honest, average for a tight end. Mixon had a decent 13, so he's back and contributing. Matt Gay had 8. Philadelphia D had 10.4. Off the bench, James had a really good game, 15.6. Hollins had 7.5. Robinson only 7.7, and DJ Moore only 0.8. So Eric wins that one. Next up, we will look at, let's see, Captain Morgs versus Mediocre Minions. This is another game that didn't really have any implications. In this case, Morgan was on by himself. He didn't really adjust his lineup. So Josh Allen had 23.8, pretty good. AJ Brown, strong 15. Thielen finally showed out 16. Taylor was on bye. Kenneth Walker has been out and injured. Firemouth had a decent 10.8. Perrin had 9.3. Folk 11.4. Off the bench, Jerry Jeudy went off. He was a killer. He was one of the 2 top wide receiver performers, especially with that 29.3 points. And then for Jeremy, he had a huge look at his benches entirely all bye week guys. Anybody who's critical for him for his starting, I think he was probably riding with his heavier hitters, at least for the time being. But if that's the case, it's a little concerning because of the low score, 104.48. Justin Herbert actually did really good, but despite those stats, it isn't as high as it could be, I guess. Stephon Diggs only had 5.2. Tyler Lockett was solid, 14.5. Derrick Henry is back, 22.7. Pacheco, an average 12.1. Hawkinson, an okay 9.7. Singletary, only 5.6. McPherson, 5.5. Miami D, 5.4. So he is going to need consistent performance from Derrick Henry. Hopefully this is a good chance for him to trend back after a down week and just being not as good as earlier in the season. And then let's see, I don't know who you would start off the bench. Patterson? Yeah, maybe I would start Patterson. Singletary is kind of, I don't know, scared to starting Bills running backs. Pacheco has been decent. And then Lockett has been solid. Yeah, he's just going to need a little bit more from Herbert and Hawkinson, and then maybe Diggs. Diggs needs to get back up to his normal levels, and then you'll see Jeremy's more typical scores. Next up, Darren versus Mike L. This one actually does have playoff implications because with a win, Darren locks his place in the playoffs. Unfortunately, he did not win. Mike plays kind of spoiler, so it's going to depend on the final tiebreakers at the end to see whether Darren makes it or not. But as far as it goes, you can see it was rough going for Derek Carr early on Thursday night. He only had 6.08. His kicker outscored him. Mike Evans only 6.4. Juju Smith-Schuster had 17.9, which is solid. Ezekiel Elliott had a decent 17.7. Mostert only 6. Hunter Henry only 8.5. He's who he was kind of relying on late today to try to pull back. It was between the New England D and Hunter Henry, and he was going to need like 40 points between both of those guys to pull back, but it obviously was not enough. Amari Cooper was down 5.2. Justin Tucker had a strong 13.2. Off the bench, he had Van Jefferson, who had 11.4. And Jones Jr. had 0.8, so nothing he could do to catch Mike. For Mike, Tunga Viola only had 13.9. Deebo Samuel had 13.8. Suffered a gruesome injury. Donovan Peoples-Jones has been one of the better second half wide receivers with 16 points. Eckler looks like he's a little bit back, 21.9. Jerick McKinnon had a big game, 29.5. All of that helping to mitigate Higbee, only 2.1. McKenzie, only 4.4. And the Cleveland D, 4.4. And like we said, Carlson outscored Carr. So the kicker outscored the quarterback. That doesn't happen often, but it happened today. And I think that was kind of like the kiss of death for Darren, locking his place in the finals. Not much to write home about the bench, I guess, for either side. So let's move on. Daddy Danny Milch versus Wrighton with Mahomes. Aaron is locked into place. Gary needed to win to secure a playoff spot. Now he gets into that multi-way tiebreaker. Cousins did strong, 28.1. Devontae Adams kind of came back down to earth, 8.6. It looked like he was going to have a big game, but he did not. Davis only 4.6. Ramondre Stevenson tonight, who he really needed to come through, only had 2.3. I think he got hurt. Cam Akers had 11 points, so it's kind of looking like it's funky, man. Remember when they were going to trade Akers? And then they ended up dropping Henderson instead, and then Kyron was brought in, and then still it looks like Cam Akers is leading the backfield. Not a whole lot, but 11 points is going to help you. Mark Andrews had a disappointing 2.7. Homer was an interesting pickup. He picked him up and got him 5.3. Mayer had a strong 12.6. LVD defense had 7.6, and then off the bench he only had Burrow, 0 points. For Aaron, a Pat Mahomes average game. A Justin Jefferson excellent game. He had 223 yards, and I think that was a record. Just no touchdowns, but that was enough to have him as the other big time receiver this week. I think T. Higgins got hurt. Saquon Barkley only had 6.7. Kyron Williams, so he's the other Rams running back, only had 3 rushing attempts this time around. Knox had 12.1. Duvernay only 1.12. Tyler Bass 11.7. Buffalo D 13.10. He could have used some of the help from the bench. Particular Zay Jones kind of had a bounce back game, 17.7, and he's looking like a real talent there. It's just kind of roulette in it's roulette there in Jacksonville, right? Because it's gonna be Zay Jones. It's gonna be it's what's his name? The receiver that came from Arizona. It's gonna move around. J.K. Dobbins was the best Baltimore running back today, 19.5. So he came back and was healthy, but it's a little worrisome because even though that's kind of like has been the tendency with Baltimore, right? They bring back somebody off of injury, they ball out, and all of a sudden they go on the shelf, and then I don't know. There's no consistency there, but if you can get consistency, that'll definitely help Aaron, especially if I don't know if Barkley got hurt or whatever, because that James guy kind of picked up the load, and then Higgins is out, so the injuries can be a little bit concerning for Aaron going down the stretch. All right, next up is Mia Milo versus Blitz and Ritz. Oh, I was sweating a little bit today too. This seems a lot closer than it was going to be. And just in general, if you look at my scores, my only saving grace was picking up Trevor Lawrence. And I didn't know if he was going to play or not because of his toe. But he ended up balling out 36.72, which kind of like really, really helped me out. And then Tony Pollard has been, to me, the better Dallas running back, 21.2. And probably what really saved me was Metcalf, who had a pretty pedestrian game until he scored the game-winning touchdown. So that touchdown really helped give me the separation I needed. If you look at like what I was trying to do, I benched Jamal Williams, 5.3, because I thought they would give more of the workload to DeAndre Swift. While they did, they also gave more of the workload to other guys, and that was kind of the story of the day in Detroit, where it was just vulturing left and right. They had touchdowns by DJ Chark, a touchdown by Reynolds, a touchdown by a running back, another running back, a different running back. It was just got vultured so much. But the big one that I'm super excited about is not this Jay Williams, but this Jay Williams. Jameson Williams, I've been holding on the bench for so long, and if I had played him, he actually scored more than Amon-Ra St. Brown because of his huge touchdown. He was so wide open and scored a 41-yard touchdown. That was his first career catch and first career touchdown, and Lions are looking good. So even though they vultured and they didn't really help me with my win, I'm super happy about them because they beat the Vikings, and we are on our way. I don't know. It's looking good. We might make the playoffs, and that's going to be like the first time in forever. Yeah, but I'm super excited about Jameson Williams. Got a jersey. I was so happy when they drafted him. Just put it on. And he was so hyped up too when he scored the touchdown. Let's go Lions. Let's go Lions. Okay. And then off the bench for me, Zonovan Knight was probably the better pickup. I played Foreman instead. because that was my decision. I could have definitely played it better, but at least it was enough to hold off Richie. Richie had a really smart move here by taking Jared Goff and benching Kyler Murray, especially in retrospect, because Kyler Murray suffered a non-contact injury tonight, and it looks like it may be season ending. That's a tough break, but fortunately enough for Richie, Jared Goff has been just balling out lately, and that's kind of a fortunate pickup to have. Christian Kirk, this is the other Jacksonville wide receiver I was talking about. Jamar Chase had a big game. He's another guy who had a big game. 23.6. Travis Etienne had only 4.9, and Njoku had a huge game, 15.3. Godwin only had 7.9, Gano only 2, and the Dallas D only had 5.1. Would have been better off playing one of these running backs over Etienne, but it is what it is. And the one that really made me nervous was James Conner, who had these huge big chunk plays, and he was like coming. Richie was coming, and then this is not the case where if I lose or Richie wins, I get into this tie. If Richie wins, I get knocked out of the playoffs, and there goes the streak of making the playoffs every single season. But for Richie, at least I think he's still in it with his point differential. But yeah, he's going to have a nice bench pieces. I think Richie has probably one of the more deeper teams, and it's paying off with the quarterback in this case. But I mean, take a look at all these guys on bye: Kamara, Montgomery, McLaurin. Those are all pretty decent guys to have. So I pull out that win, and I think that just means I make the playoffs. So let's go to the one and the last one that was a true head-to-head. Both 6 and 7 teams. I think winner gets into the fray of maybe making the playoffs. Loser is going to go out. So in this case, James lost and had a tough break. So James gets eliminated, I think, from the playoffs. Mike might be eliminated too, but we're gonna have to see the tallies of the tiebreakers at the end. But for Mike, he had a big game from Jalen Hurts, 33.18. Keelan Allen had a decent game, 15.2. Mike Williams is back, 20.6. And then you can kind of see with the full strength wide receiving core, it makes a difference there, right? Because they put the boot in Miami, and Herbert looks good with his full complement of receivers, and they all help each other to rise up, right? And then Latavius Murray only had 5.4, Leonard Fournette only 8, Kelsey decent 9.1, MVS only 2.5, Butker had a good 13 points, Kansas City D was strong at 16.4, and on the bench, a bunch of guys who weren't available, and Carter had 1.42, Minnesota D negative 0.3. And for James, he had Tom Brady had 15.72, lost the head-to-head battle against Brock Purdy. Tyreek Hill had a strong game, 22.1. I think he's the best receiver in the league. DeAndre Hopkins had 10.4. He needed some help from him tonight, but it was just not enough. What's kind of a tough break is those pass interference calls, right? There was a big, like 39-yard pass interference call, and had that not been a pass interference and was a reception, that's points. But we don't count pass interference. If I had the ability to put pass interference yards in, I would have done it already. I've wanted to do that for so long. It's just not an option in Yahoo. So it's unfortunate, right? Because you have contributions from the receiver in that regard. You should at least be able to have some kind of compensation for it. But nope, you get nothing. McCaffrey had a huge game, 29.7 going off. And then in fact, early on, Mike was favored. And then McCaffrey just took off. And then all of a sudden, James was favored. It was just until later on, it kind of flip-flopped back again. Edwards only had 7.9. Kittle only 4.8. CeeDee Lamb only 5.8. Badgley, another strong kicking game, 13.9. And the Seattle D only at 1.7. That was kind of an upset. Carolina knocking them out and also decreasing those defensive points. Off the bench, Brandon Ayuk had 12.7, which is pretty decent. I think they're going to probably rely on him a little bit more too now that Debo is hurt and he's going to be out for a little while. Everett only had 5.3. Daniel Jones had a decent 21.56. Would that have helped you? It would have helped you a little bit, but not enough to get you over the hump. Let's see if you could actually won. I mean, it's a difference of 10 points, right? And so you have like almost a 5 to 6 point differential for the quarterbacks and between Ayuk and let's say CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, I think if you played it differently, maybe James wins this one. But so far, and I think James has had the highest points for, so he probably gets a lock into the playoffs. But unfortunately, he gets knocked out. Congrats, James, for pushing it down to the very end. I don't know. You're gonna go to 6 and 8 now. So yeah, you're out of the playoffs officially. But yeah, great effort. So that's the recaps for the week. I will take a look at it and maybe make another vlog. Another podcast, whatever you guys call this, highlighting who made the playoffs. But until then,